Howdy, howdy, fellow movie watchers, and welcome back for another edition of the Wisco Movie Watchers podcast, brought to you by PTE Creative. As always, we're your hosts, Evan Davies and Dylan Davies. Now, this is more of a Dylan-centric episode, as he has given us our next entry into the Cult Classic series today.
Yep.
Not many times have you led us astray here, which is good. We went back.
This is one that I just wanted to force you to watch.
I wouldn't say. I don't know if someone would have to force me to watch this one, but it's probably, yeah. I guess if you're gonna say, would you come to it by yourself? It's probably not something that's gonna grab my attention. But we are covering Black Christmas. For those that are on YouTube, you already know the thumbnail. It's here, but. We are here to cover Black Christmas from 1974. Just the spirit of the holidays is just running through us. Specifically, your resident Christmas movie hater. This is a better Christmas movie than most Christmas movies I've seen. I'll give you that.
Hey, it's got something for everyone, I think.
It's a weird tone. I will say this.
Yeah.
And I know, unfortunately, half the audio of this episode was corrupted, so we're gonna eventually have to go back and redo some of Sleepaway Camp. But this didn't capture my heart and soul like Sleepaway Camp does. But this is a far superior movie.
But yeah, this is like an actual well-made movie, whereas Sleepaway Camp is just crazy.
Well, I mean, Sleepaway Camp, if we're being kind, is utter garbage, but it's fucking hilarious and awesome.
This is good, and Sleepaway Camp is bad good.
Yeah, so. That's one of the few movies I'd say it's so bad it's good kind of thing. Cause it's just,
exactly, yeah.
But we're here, Black Christmas, starring Olivia Hussey, Margot Kidder, who's most known for her Superman role as Lois Lane. Which is super interesting. And talk about a woman who had a real difficult life. God damn,
True.
She went through the fucking ringer with mental health, and as someone, or as both of us who struggle with mental health issues, if you need help, please go do that. That's just always what we're going to tell you. If you need help, seek the help you need. It's really important, especially when we're talking about someone like Margot Kidder, who had a really rough go of it mental health wise. So if you need help, go find help. But that's not really why we're, as much as we love doing the PSA, that's not what we're here to talk about with Margot Kidder. This movie's interesting. It's a vibe.
Yeah. I mean, it has, like, proper stars in it. As Olivia Hussey, this is after Romeo and Juliet.
Yep. That's why I knew her. Oh my god. I never put that together. I was like, why does her face seem so familiar to me?
I'm sure you were forced to watch that in English class, right?
You would be correct. I was, and I remember that vividly. Yeah. I remember that movie vividly.
I actually like that movie quite a bit. I actually do like that movie, so
I think I was a little too busy making jokes on its behalf, but yeah.
Okay, yeah. And then Margot Kidder, she hasn't done Superman, so it's not like she's a huge star or anything yet.
Right.
She had already done Sisters, and she had done a couple movies already. And then Keir Dullea, who's the leader, Olivia Hussey's boyfriend, he's the lead in 2001: A Space Odyssey. So that's a giant movie.
Yeah, I would probably say that, yeah.
Yeah, and then with John Saxon, he's been in it for 10 years. So
yeah. No, so there's
a proper cast in it.
Yeah, there's a proper cast. This isn't a horror movie that upon release you're like, who?
Yeah, and it's directed by Bob Clark, who made Porky and A Christmas Story. He also made Baby Geniuses later in his career.
Not a good reflection at the end of his career, apparently.
Yeah, but you can't all be winners, right? Can't be all Spielbergs.
True, I guess, I mean, that is something I do like, especially going back in the past and looking at directors that I love or movies that I love, and then I see like, oh, same director, interesting. Like John Milius, just like
Sure.
he's got two movies that I absolutely adore in Conan the Barbarian and Red Dawn, and then just fucking off a cliff with some crazy ass conservative ideas that you're just like, you're out of your fucking mind, dude. Like,
Yeah.
but it is interesting to say. Uh, I'll get the ball rolling here. Interesting opening credits. Just the vibe alone sets a tone really, really well. Even before you get to the following, this, I guess this is technically more of a spree killer than a serial killer, but naturally we're led to believe that this is a serial killer. Not enough people know the difference, so that's why we'll just probably it's the serial killer.
Yeah, I should have looked this up if this took place after or before the Ted Bundy sorority killings. I think it took place beforehand, but it's very reminiscent of that.
Yes, I'll look it up for you right now.
But yeah, right away it sets up, has the killer cam, which is famous already. I'm assuming there's killer cam stuff in Keeping, which came out in I think 1960, which is like that and Psycho are like the two classic, considered the two classic grandfathers of slasher flicks. So I I'm assuming there's like tons of European films that I have no idea about
Yeah.
that also like originated the killer cam, but like the thing that I know it from is
Yeah. So this happens pre Ted Bundy being public.
okay.
Um, January 4th, he kills a student in University of Washington in Seattle. And
Okay,
then,
I'm thinking of specifically the one in Florida where it's like in a sorority house.
yeah, and then the sorority house happens in January of 78.
Okay, so yeah, late 70s.
So I will go back
Yeah.
quick to the killer cam. I was really intrigued by that because I had no idea how the hell they shot that. Because obviously Psycho, you know, they're putting it in a POV, but when you've got like when it actually looks like he's climbing the goddamn trellis with it,
Yeah.
I'm like, how did they do that with?
Yeah, the best I can figure is they just had it on a crane and just lifted it and then had someone climbing around it. But like, yeah, I was trying to figure that out too. Because I mean, that's a film camera. That's a cumbersome thing back in the
Right,
day.
like we're not talking about today where Scorsese can shoot an entire movie on an iPhone.
Yeah, like you cannot. Those cameras were not small.
No,
So
and
yeah,
that was what intrigued me because you know the killer cam, like you said, Psycho and other stuff, and obviously there's a million movies from Europe and around the world that are trailblazing in ways that we'll never know unless you're like
yeah, exactly.
film school devotee and you just deep dive history for stuff. You'll never know fully who
Yeah, and
originated the shot.
specifically deep dive into horror too.
Oh yeah. So and that's the other thing. Horror, half the innovation comes when it's just two people sitting around a table going, "What if this?" and then they figure it out. And then a bigger movie keeps taking it and revitalizing it for other years. But
Yeah, and this actually comes out months after Texas Chainsaw, which is like this and that are like the two that people consider like the start of the modern slasher movies, where they're actually slashers, where Psycho and really aren't proper slashers, like photo slashers, where it's not really.
sure.
Yeah.
And I love how you do not see the killer. I think that's
Oh,
great.
those the shots of like just his eye in the door
Yes.
frame, it's so
Yes.
good.
That's definitely the I think that's the best shot of the movie. Is the eye
Yeah, I love it.
through the door
Or the
frame.
one where he's lifting it, he has the corn above his head,
Yep.
his eyes lit up. That's great too.
It's a great shot. Now that we just saw because we saw eyes, I love any movie when it's character basis and you only highlight the eyes. It's always what took me, even as a child, what I loved about the 90s Addams Family, how when they shoot Morticia for Angelica Houston, there's always just this light right here that there's just something intriguing and more unsettling
Sure.
about her. And even as a kid, I just went, that's awesome. I don't know what is going on, but I
Yeah.
fucking love it. And I
Kind
adore
of
that here.
like Universal monsters like Dracula kind.
Yes. I
Yeah, where
love
they're
that vibe.
given the eyes a specific light of their own.
Yeah, that's tremendous. Obviously, start of the movie is relatively basic for a slasher, but we don't. This is the
Yeah.
start of a slasher movie as you started, so a big.
I really want to point out Olivia Hussey's way of answering a phone is absolutely insane. You'll like she'll go hello, and then if they don't say something within like 1 second, she'll just start yelling hello, like immediately. It's so funny.
Yeah, so that is something I do want to touch on. I don't think the cheaper parts of this movie, I think, are the writing in terms of dialogue.
I actually disagree, just because I think that characters actually have quite a bit of nuance for a horror movie.
Sure, sure.
You don't often get that much depth within characters, like where like Phil and Jess, like they're actually like breaking down about their friend who they think
Is
um
dead.
the first girl, yeah, they
Yeah,
think
Claire.
she's dead. Like you rarely get where people are actually like coming to terms with death
Yeah,
in a horror movie.
I would say the reason I would have more of the thoughts on that is I think the writing of the characters isn't inherently bad. I just think there's a few of them that are too one note for me, and
Sure.
then on top of it, I don't think this movie balances tone very well.
I would agree on that a little bit. But also like Margot Kidder, like she is like pretty much one note throughout the whole thing.
Oh yeah,
Then there then she does get that scene where she starts to like show a different side where she's saying like, "Oh, you guys are all you're blaming this on me." Like she is showing vulnerability.
yes. I don't think it's. I don't. One note might not be the right description, but I think it's far to one side, but it's not maybe all the way to the wall, all the way to the extreme, but
Yeah.
it's far to one side or the other. Speaking of Margot Kidder's character, this movie grabbed my attention dialogue wise with the first phone call, and it's just you're a real gold plated whore, mother, and I was like, Jesus Christ, like that's some dialogue, man.
Yeah. I it was cracking me up too when the moaner first calls,
Yeah.
and then like, "Oh, not bad." When
Yeah, like because the thing is this is as much as I detested sometimes some of the stuff that happens. I have the note here
oh, I mean,
that
it gets really, really disgusting at
yeah,
point.
I have a note that the screenwriter has a real stereotypical sense of what college students are at the time. I would say these are all outside of Jess, everyone's
Yeah,
pretty stereotypical, right? And
I would
Jess,
assume so. Yeah.
yeah, like it's very stereotypical. But the worst part is like so I did not go to Marquette University, but my entire like friend crew from around that time, they're all like, you pretty much your honorary Marquette because I lived on campus for like 2 years with Ab. And knowing people that were very much that Barb character, then I was just like, oh, they don't take shit seriously. They just want to get shit faced and like that's what they want their life to be, and they kind of think that college is the peak of life. I sadly like I'm like, oh, it's so stereotypical. I'm like, but it's honest. like,
Yeah, it
like
is.
even around 2012 to 2014, when I was around that atmosphere a lot, I was like, it's honest. It's not inherently wrong.
So when they were filming the the first Moaner, well, actually, I think when they were filming all of like the calls where they're saying all the disgusting stuff,
Yeah.
they they were just reacting to Bob Clark saying in the room, but he was saying like much more milder stuff because he wanted like mild reaction. He didn't want it to be like extreme reactions to like really raunchy shit.
Oh,
So
it's an
that's
interesting
why
take. I mean, I guess that could work if you're trying to make sure that you're building, and you're like, oh, I don't want to I don't want
I
to shoot
think
my wad now. I want to build to that, but
I think that works so much better because it's like you don't want to like play your hand to showing like extreme fear the first scene, like
I will say, yeah, the
delivery.
only person that shows any real fear is Claire, and she's dead in the next 4 minutes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Where,
Like you don't want like spikes in your movie of horror, really.
yeah,
Generally, you want to build up.
yeah, I will give it that credit though. That is correct, and I think it's also another way. What's funny is even with the stereotypes, even with the one note stuff, outside of what the police force looks like in this town,
Oh, they're boobs. They are real boobs.
they're idiots, and we'll talk about them a lot later on.
Yeah.
I think the I think the portrayals of college age students at this time is actually quite accurate and quite very much just like, yeah, there I have the other notice. Everyone in this movie, outside of very few exceptions, is just baseline rude.
I would agree completely with all the male characters. I don't know about the female character.
I mean, Barb
Margot
is,
Kidder.
Barb certainly is, Mrs. McHenry certainly is.
Oh yeah, she definitely.
Phil isn't, but she's far more of a middle ground.
I love Phil in this. The greatest friend of all time.
She's a good friend. You gotta give I that I will say this is you can tell that why that this along with Texas Chainsaw and a few other movies of the era really inspires people, and then sadly they don't take all the lessons from the inspiration that they should.
Yeah. Well, you can see like there is absolutely no tropes here because there's no reason why Jess would be the final girl. Really,
Yeah,
it's just that she's the biggest star in the movie, therefore she is the final girl.
yeah. Which normally nowadays you get them out quick. You
Yeah,
and you're
that's true.
and especially if you're trying to get the audience to believe that, well, if anyone's going the distance, it's gonna be her, it's gonna be him, and the first thing you do
Yeah.
is take them off the map because then it feels like nobody's safe.
Yeah, that's true. They often go for subversion now, which it's kind of getting old.
It's getting old. It can still be done well, but you have to do it well. I don't think enough people do because it's the same thing when I think about it. When I base things off of reality or what's going to get people when I tell a story, it's always okay. How can we twist? How can we swerve our audience to make them feel unsettled in some way if it's that kind of story? And usually, my first thing is, okay, well, is your main character actually your main character? Well, if they're not, off them. Because then it feels like all bets are off, nobody's safe. Which is, I think, the reason Game of Thrones worked for so long. Because every time you got attached to someone, they were gone, and it just felt nobody's safe here. Which is the beauty of that show and the beauty of that series. It always feels like there's stakes because there always is stakes of somebody dying. Eventually it gets old, but, you know. You're right. There's no sign of tropes because tropes don't exist yet. They're just
Yeah,
okay.
that's what I love about it.
And the thing is, I think what's really interesting is the trend-setting aspects of only person who wears a clear crucifix is Jess. So is that's to me because it's such a gaudy, and when I mean gaudy, like clearly obvious fixture of her costuming. You're clearly sending a message with that, where you're trying to say, well, this is still a really good person that you should root for, especially in the 70s. And
Yeah, but she's still like talking about getting an abortion.
but again, I think it's the visual cues that you go, she doesn't dress like someone that, this isn't leftover free love hippie girl where you go, huh, okay, that's a little risque for the time.
Yeah.
She never looks outwardly what a lot of people of the time frame would say is outwardly promiscuous or outwardly sexual in nature. But she clearly has that depth to her, which I think is the reason why I will say one thing I would love to give the writer credit for. Jess is very nuanced here. And there's a lot of fixtures to Jess, and Jess is not just the one note damsel in distress. And I love that about
Yeah.
this. And I think the costuming goes into that a lot because it very much is like,
Oh, I could look at those 70s clothes all day.
oh yeah, no, it's fun. It's a
And
vibe. It's a vibe, man.
yeah, Art Hindle, who I think is Claire's boyfriend, with that like completely fur jacket, and that thing is awesome.
Well, I mean, we're living in the right times, 60s and 70s. What I like, I've said this in just like friendly conversations, is now in 2024, obviously the trends are going back to the 90s because the 90s kids are now ruling that era, and pretty soon we're starting to even eke into 2000 stuff that I was like, what are you doing? But you always revert back to what you thought was cool. Like, look how the mullets made a huge resurgence in popularity because the people who grew up with seeing those people as really cool, they're adults now and they can make the decision to do it. Or the mustache is back now in a real big
Yep.
way because, again, the people who saw it with people that they thought were cool, they're now doing it to make it look good. But I will say there is something really good about this era of time right now in which it feels like with the amount of exposure on the internet and everything else that's available to people, whatever your vibe is, if you can pull it off, it's fine. Like there are people online that they do like the classics housewife look from like the 50s, but it works for them because that's just that
Yeah.
style fits them, everything's
Maybe it's like once it gets to a certain level of period,
yeah.
like once it gets to 70 years old or whatever.
Yeah.
And once it gets past that point, and it becomes classic, and then it's fine. It doesn't become just dated, you know?
Yeah, I would say I think the 80s still looks super dated to me,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
but there are elements, especially loving 80s movies and then loving pro wrestling, which didn't get out of the 80s until the mid 90s. Like,
Mhm.
there's still like a lot of popular wrestlers and professionals of the time that you're like, still rocking the mullet in 95, huh, Sean? Like, is my favorite wrestler of all time. And I'm like, Sean, what the fuck are we doing? Like, come on, man. Get it together. Or, so many other classic examples like that of just guys not updating and things of that nature. But it is pretty interesting that it feels like the time we live in now really fits like a glove for people, where it's like, okay, you want to be super modern, ultra like chic, you can do that. But if you want to be looking 70s esque, if it works for you, do that. 60s, whatever works for you, just do it. If you can pull off the vibe, pull the vibe off. It doesn't matter. And I always think that's really
Yeah.
interesting. But you are correct. The costuming, in terms of the look of these characters, it's pretty rad. I'm not gonna lie. I was
Yeah.
like, nice.
I just enjoyed looking at them all. Like, it was just mesmerizing at times.
I will also give them this credit. Everyone that you focus on in this movie does have a distinct look.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if they're just wearing their own clothes. Because I assume this is not a huge budget.
It's a possibility.
Because I would think a horror movie in '74 shooting in Canada, like, I can't assume this was a big budget.
No. No.
So, I
Well,
would not be
also,
surprised at all.
this is also tailor made for the low budget because there isn't a lot of big production. There's not a lot of sets.
Oh,
There's not
yeah,
a lot
it's
much
like
of anything.
it's one house, and then they're shooting at college at
Yep.
times.
That's it.
Although, I need to point out the phone tracing stuff. I don't understand any of it, but it was so fun watching it.
Yes, it was
Like,
interesting
I
to
have
see
no
it.
idea what's going on.
I will say there was a part of me that felt like watching it that the writer was like, "This is really clever. This is really avant-garde," and me kind of going like,
It's like
"Okay,
it's like you heard about it in, like, I don't know, hundreds of movies,
yeah,
and you just kind of accept it because you're just like, oh yeah, they have to be doing something.
yeah."
They have to be working on something to do whatever they need to do. So it's fun to actually see what the hell they're actually trying to do.
I will give them that. This felt again. There's a dose of reality to this that makes it work. When you want to work in a certain genre, you need to have a dose of reality to make it feel tangible and make it feel real. I think that's part of the reason a lot of these newer age fantasy things never get off the ground because they lose all tangibility of reality. They just don't. Here, I love how it's like, hey, we understand that you're getting these awful phone calls, and we're really sorry for you. But if you do not continue to suffer, we can't trace it. And twice it fucking fails. They don't just
Yeah.
do like, oh, got him.
Yeah, this is also the age of no cell phones. Can't even tell who's calling you.
Yeah, it's glorious. Glorious. I love it.
It's such a. I was thinking about that the other day too. When I watched it, was not only could you not tell who was calling you, but your phone number was just out there in the phone book for everyone to see. Like, remember that?
Yeah.
And then half the time your address was in there too.
Yeah, that was wild. When I think back to now, I'm like, how sensitive some of that stuff is. Where,
It is so weird.
especially now that I'm working with kids again, it's crazy to me how much we look back at what we took for granted and was
Yeah.
just like, oh, it's fine. And now I actively have to kill. I live on Bubba. I'm like, don't tell me where you live. I don't want to know. Like, I'll ask you if it becomes a problem and I have to take you home or something in like some crazy emergency situation that never happens. I don't, or I'll go check your file. I don't need, I don't need you to tell me that because you shouldn't just be blurting out where you live now.
Yeah.
To the point
People
where
are more
even,
trusting, I
I
guess.
mean, to the point where even I know a lot of people online, they won't even say what city they live in. They'll only,
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I've already, you and I have kind of revealed, like, hey, these are the cities we live in. But am I ever going to give someone their actual address? Absolutely not. That's crazy. But
Yeah.
but even there's a lot of people that would say like, you told on you went on a podcast online and you said which city you live in. It's like, yeah. So who cares? But back in the day, that was just super trusting, and just being like, oh, what could possibly go wrong? Think of all these domestic abuse issues and shit back in the day that could have been averted had we just not had the most obvious thing of all time. Because now, the funny part is, like you saying that, there's so many people now in the movie going audience that never grew up in that world, where we got the very tail end of it. Like, I remember when phone books switched to just having phone numbers. And then a couple of years after that, everyone's like, why do we... Beyond the, hey, we all have cell phones and we can save it, there was also this, like, why did we have these in the first place? kind of vibes, which is always hilarious to me. But if you made this movie today, and then, oh, I'm just going to go to the phone book, you'd be 100% accurate, and moviegoers would not believe you, because they'd be like, they couldn't have been that dumb. They couldn't have been that.
Yeah, that's probably true. They would probably say, like, this is unrealistic.
Yeah, because it's just yeah. Looking back, I was doing my research for my top 100 list and other stuff that we're preparing for in the future, and I mean, Back to the Future. It's how Marty finds Doc. Just goes to a phone book, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, that
Yep.
would never fly
Address
today.
right in there.
Yeah, it is old, to say the least. Yeah, there's just some wild dialogue and some wild shit going on. I do want to touch on Miss or Mrs. McHenry. That woman's a vibe, but for all the wrong reasons.
So one of the things that I picked up this time was, why is she hiding her drinking? Why does she like even bother? Like, these girls would be completely fine with it, I think.
I don't know. I think it's that classic.
Especially Margot Kidder, she'd be drinking with her.
Maybe that's it. Is she doesn't want her booze to be gone and she wants to hide her booze? Who knows?
Oh, maybe,
I
maybe.
think if I'm being forced to make a decision to give you the answer, maybe that's it. The other thing I
I
can
was like,
think of is
Mrs. Mack, just go party with the girls. They'll
I,
gladly let you drink.
I think the 80s and then into the 90s and the 2000s is where you first start seeing depictions of characters going against type a lot. And like the 60s and the 70s, in the early 80s even, you're still seeing a lot of that. Well, I'm an authority figure, so I have to be an authority figure, and even if they're flawed, they hide it in some weird way, kind of like Mrs. McHenry. They don't just kind of go in and be themselves or be something.
Yeah.
She's
Or they
still
could
very.
just be adding time and trying to be funny.
Yeah, and
Like,
again, I think some of the tone. I think you can get away with some of the tone stuff, like her hiding booze in a library book, her hiding booze in a toilet. I
yeah.
think is hilarious in the first act when you're starting to go that way. But when you're starting to get later into the movie and some of the hijinks are happening, you're like, guys, it's not how it works. Don't do it now.
I mean, yeah, that could just be Bob Clark. Just, 'cause, I mean, the majority of his movies were comedies. That could just be the reason why. Maybe.
I mean, one of the reasons that you find some of the most hilarious one-liners or some of the most hilarious scenes in some of the most vicious horror movies is because you do need to balance that. You do need to have a tone balance where a lot of audiences cannot, they can now, but especially back in the day were thought to be that it can't just be 100% dark or 100% evil or
Yeah,
100%.
sure.
You had to add levity, and I still believe in that formula that you still need to have some levity in here. Otherwise, you always feel like you're taking yourself too seriously or something of that nature unless you're really working on a specific project. Here, I think it works in the first act, but then the second and third act, I'm like, what is going on? Especially what gets me the first time because it made me laugh, but also I looked at it and went, that's kind of fucked. Was when Claire's dad shows up, and the first scene that you see him, he gets hit in the face with a snowball, and it's just like, ha, fuck you, old man. It's like, god damn, dude.
Yeah. I did not remember that, and when he got hit right in the fucking eye, I laughed out loud because I did not expect it.
I think I was
But
writing a previous note, and I looked up and just saw, and it just,
yeah,
I don't know what it was. I think the impact sound or whatever. I just kept hearing Family Guy, pow, right in the kisser, pow, right in the
I
kisser.
mean that's another character where like in a normal horror
You
movie
don't get that.
with that character,
No.
like that's a character where you actually feel sorry for him the entire time.
Yeah.
'Cause- And that's another part where Phil is where she's like showing empathy for him, where she's like, "Oh, I feel really sorry for Claire's dad."
Yeah.
Like, I don't get that in most horror movies.
Yeah, I think I need to walk back some of my other comments about the writing. I think
Also,
some of the
I love
execution might be too one note, but there is a lot of actually nuance to the. Hey, we got to keep the perspective. Like this is really fucked that this would happen, and then we got to see a parent go through this.
Yeah, and I love the part where they're looking for that 13 or 12-year-old girl who went missing, and then they showed the father's reaction, Claire's dad's reaction to seeing it, but he doesn't really have a reaction at all. It's just like blank faced. And they showed the 12-year-old's mother come up behind him. Just pure horror. Like that's good stuff. That's good writing.
Yeah, it is. I'll
And
give him
good
that credit.
directing. Never showing it. You just show it all through reaction.
Well, you let the audience do the job for you, and
Exactly.
you can never top what someone has up here. You never can. There are certain moments where maybe someone you set it up to be so low expectations that when you just blow it out of the water, people like never saw that one coming. But 99 times out of 100, you can never outdo what an audience has in their head. So just don't sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, that's a good case for this. I do have this note a little bit previous to that moment is original Han Solo up in this one. I love you. I know. And I was like,
Oh, yep.
and I just, because you don't know Peter at the time, you just kind of, you keep use. I'm stressed. And they used to do that a lot back in the day in movies where that was used as an excuse and people were like, well, he's going through such a tough time. Not, hey, this guy kind of sounds like kind of sucks. Instead, it was supposed to be like, oh, give him the benefit of the doubt. And I love in this movie, you getting like the original Han Solo line. I know that's not what it's meant to be, but I love you. I know. I just want that's fucking cold. God damn, Jess.
Yeah, but it's completely warranted knowing Peter.
Oh, because two notes later, I also have Peter fucking sucks.
It's so funny. I wish you could see my notes. Literally, word for word. That's what I have down too.
Peter fucking sucks. Peter fucking sucks, man. And it just gets worse. It just gets worse.
Yeah. So I guess one of the questions here is, think the murders are connected? Because they never answer that, really.
Yeah.
Is the young girl and those sorority killings connected? Because you would assume so. Because what are the chances?
Right.
But then also, like, those are completely different MOs. But are they thinking about that also? Probably not.
That might be a little too nuanced for serial killer material.
Yeah, exactly.
In the mid 70s. However, I don't know. I really don't know because they set up Peter as such a good red herring. The audience knows it's not Peter. And I don't think they ever get to the point where they try to make the audience believe that it's Peter. There was even a time where I thought there was a better setup that would have been really interesting to have Barb as the killer. I even thought about that one because there's these moments where she's just not around and shit's happening. I was like, it could be, but I'm too used to modern movies where you're getting, these wild twists out of nowhere.
Yeah, just to be wild.
Sure. Just to be wild. So I thought that was too much of a stretch, but I thought that was there even more than Peter. I don't think they ever get the audience to believe Peter's the killer. However, I do think they do a good enough job of making the audience understand why the police and the other people in that world would believe Peter be the killer.
Yeah.
And
yeah, from John Saxon's point of view, for one, Peter sucks. He's like a completely destructive asshole.
Yep.
And yeah, he seems like a complete asshole to Jess. It's like, yeah, I would understand that.
Yeah, one of the only lines that ever got me about that was when they first bring up the idea that Peter could be the killer, and just like, no, but he's usually just so gentle. And I was like, it's not what we've seen.
I know. I was like, yes, what do you see in this guy?
Yeah, but I do like the fact that she doesn't defend him. She never gets put in the position to defend him. That's more of like the retrospective kind of viewpoint. But they never put her in a place. Jess never looks stupid. And I really appreciate that. They never
I don't
make
think
her out
any
to
of
be
the
an idiot.
characters really look stupid.
That's another thing that people don't understand about when they take the inspiration from this movie, they don't understand how smart this movie is in some ways, and they only take the, well, you don't know who the killer is, and then like crazy stuff happens, and isn't that wild? But then they lose the intelligence of the characters along the way. They just go, well,
Yeah,
the prim and proper girl, she made it. Like, well, no,
yeah,
that wasn't the
yeah,
point.
exactly. And she's not going up at the very end when she finds out that the calls are coming from inside the house. She's not going upstairs because she's stupid. She's going upstairs because she cares about her friend.
Yeah,
Like, she's not forcing herself into a situation because she's dumb, and it's just a dumb decision to put that character in that situation.
yeah,
Like, because that's a lot of what modern bad horror movies, they just force characters into situations which are just like, why would that character ever make that decision?
yeah, yeah, yep, 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 yep. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I am almost. It's sad when you kind of watch some of these movies, you start talking about them and really grow an appreciation for them, and then you see what they created in their wake of other people's work, and you just go, how'd you lose that? Like that just seems 101ish, where
Well,
it's
yeah. And like the ones that come directly after it, like Halloween, they keep it. But then once you get the derivatives of the derivative of the derivative,
it's bad.
where it's just, yeah, it gets really, really bad.
Which is usually why I love horror comedy, because they make fun of it and they're self-aware about it. They just go, we all know everyone's in on the joke. Let's just have everyone in on the joke and make a bigger joke out of it. I'm like, I'm fine with that. But that's a genre that I love and it works for me. But it doesn't work for other things. And if you're going to do a pure horror movie, you got to do something like this. There's all these characters that you want to root for, and even the characters you don't want to root for. You have some like I don't want Barb to die. I think Barb's a bitch, but I don't want
Oh,
Barb to die, you know?
I also find her like hilarious at times when she's like giving her drink to the little kid. Like that's hilarious.
It was entertaining. I'll give you that. Yeah, that's interesting vibes. I want to come back to Peter, but speaking of Barb's interactions, let's talk about the police. What a bunch of fucking
Oh, sure.
momos, dude. Like,
Yeah.
what a bunch of momos.
So I don't really have notes on them at the very end. Um, like Sergeant Nash, the one who originally talks to Barb, and then he also talks to Jess on the phone to try to get her out of the house. I was like, this guy is just completely incompetent. Like there's a way of talking to Jess to get her out of the house or calm. He is just doing the exact opposite.
He does the exact opposite of what all police work is supposed to be when being done.
Yes.
Never corroborates anything, never follows through on anything, never does any. Like, people wonder why the police got the reputation that they did with modern generations. This is a perfect example of what people feel police are like at times.
Yeah.
And the funny part is, I remember when they come to the house, and Phil and Jess are following around the lieutenant, and then he takes them to the window. He's like, "Hey, I want to show you something. See that out there? That's one of our guys. If you ever need anything, he's right there. You'll be safe." And I love that the second Phil turns around, she's like, "Yeah, I'm sure that's gonna work."
Yeah.
And most people in movies would treat that as, you don't have to be such a skeptic all the time. Because even I was like, well, I mean, this is actually far more than a lot of police in movies would ever do.
True.
They actually put someone out to do the fucking job.
Yeah, those Canadian police, they're trying to help. at least.
I was wondering if this is supposed to be set in Canada or not.
I think it's supposed to be America, but it's just filmed in Canada.
Yeah, it feels like it's
So
supposed to be set up in the Northeast somewhere of the U.S., like upstate New York or
yeah,
something like that. Especially because I'm going to take a train into the city, and I was like,
but
that gives
there's
me New York City vibes. But
there's bunch of Canadian actors in it.
yeah,
That's why I keep calling it Canada.
oh, Claire's boyfriend who goes off on half his words, and I'm like, that's a Canadian
Yeah,
if I've ever heard it.
Yeah, that's Art Hindle,
Yeah,
and he lets out when he says, "Oh, I've been taking her out."
yeah. The,
It comes out very strong there.
that Canadian O comes out, and you're like,
Yeah,
God damn,
so
brother.
fun.
It's fun to see, but yeah, Nash is an incompetent moron. Oh, it's a new extension, fellatio. Yeah, it's a new extension, and what the fuck?
Well, so I at first I was like, okay, so he's just taking that on faith. Then later it's like, okay, he just doesn't know what that word means at all.
Yeah,
So he's just doubly an idiot.
yes. And again, it leads to scenes that I think on their surface are funny but misplaced. Where he gives the notes over
Yes.
to the lieutenant, and the detectives are just laughing at him because all they can do is just think, wow, we work with a complete and utter moron. But
Yeah.
he's like, what? It's a
But
new extension. And I love the fact that he's like, you wouldn't be able to pick your nose if you didn't have instructions. Like,
yeah. And my argument for it would be like there really weren't horror movies made that were like just out and out horror back then.
yeah.
Like Texas Chainsaw, that which came out 2 months earlier, that's horror 100%. There's no levity in that fucking movie.
Yeah.
And it is I mean, I love that movie, but it's an unpleasant watch. It is not a fun watch.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
so so it is at least giving some levity. So it's at least kind of fun to watch this movie, which that's why
Sure.
it's like more rewatchable to me.
Sure. I can give you that. It's just it feels very misplaced in.
Sure. I mean, I completely understand that point.
But my God, I have the notes that went from quite possibly the worst police force ever to legitimately the worst police force ever.
Yeah, John Saxon, he's competent, but the rest of them, oh,
Well, I feel like we're kind of just dancing through some stuff here, and we'll cover it all in waves. I think the crux of this movie is Jess and Peter for the red herring for others, the killer being in the house, obviously, and then the police's reaction to this. I think the search party thing and all that is interesting, but I don't know if it's inherent. I think it builds the
yeah,
paranoia for the characters. I'll give it that. I think that works.
yes,
And I do find it hilarious. Well done storytelling if it's the first time that you're telling a story like this. So I give it credit because I keep having to remind myself, hey, this is before everything else like
yeah,
this. Because, the amount of times that the killer kills somebody and it just so happens something super loud is going on to cover their noise, I'm like, okay. And as a modern viewer, I go, that sucks. But at the same time, I'm like, no, that's really smart if you're the first person to do it.
yes,
Such as
exactly.
the caroling or the other stuff that goes on
Oh,
with.
by the way, carolers, and that's my nightmare.
I can't imagine what would happen if Christmas carols showed up at your front.
I know, I would just literally ignore it. Like, no, I am not answering this door. Even if they knew I was home, I would not answer it.
And
I would have to ignore it.
the worst part is I know for a fact that is 100% accurate.
Yes,
Where
that is like
I would not be
it's so
happy.
awkward.
I wouldn't be happy if that happened, but I would do the honest and decent thing and at least come to the door and say, "Oh, thank you guys. I really appreciate that. Hope everyone else enjoys it." You would
No.
legitimately just ignore them and just be like,
Yeah.
I also could see you in a world also just screaming out, "No one's here!" like just random
Like,
stuff to try to make it clear. I'm not home, but also I don't want you here either.
I don't want someone singing a song to me for 3 minutes. Oh, that is awkward.
Yeah, especially about Jesus Christ in the Christmas season. I don't need that shit.
Yeah.
I don't need that at all. Yeah. But I thought that was interesting from a 74. That's a good way to cover your tracks. But if someone did that today and they just kept using it over and over like this movie does, I'd be like, guys, you gotta find something a little bit
Yeah.
more intriguing.
Did you watch movies with subtitles on or
I hate
okay.
subtitles. I detest subtitles.
I watch everything with subtitles on. So, from what I can gather, Billy is the killer. That's his name. From what I can gather, it seems when he was a child, Billy either was responsible for his younger sister's death or killed his sister. Not entirely clear
Okay.
because he was left in charge of his sister
Where are you
by
supposed to
one of
get
his
that from?
parents. By that's what he's talking about. Like when he's doing his mom and dad's voices, like he's doing both his parents' voices when they're calling.
Okay. I
Yeah, he's
guess.
doing all their voices. Yeah, that's why I wrote down he would make one hell of a ventriloquist. He's like doing all the voices himself. That's why when you do put the subtitles on, you get that story. When you don't put the subtitles on, it's hard to make out what he's actually saying.
Yeah, sometimes I would say if that is truly a connection that they're trying to make,
I don't think it's important though.
I
Like
think it might be because then it goes more into the abortional storyline with Jess and Peter. And if that is truly an intent to your film, you need to do a better job because you can't rely on subtitles to tell your story.
I'm just saying, I don't think it's important unless motive for the killer is really important as a viewer.
Sure. Yeah,
Which,
I think
in
that could be
terms of
intentional
this
though
movie,
because of the abortion storyline of Jess and Peter.
oh yeah, I mean, if that's important to you as a viewer, then yes, it's important to you. But like, really, is it necessary? Not really. Because it's just a horror movie about someone killing someone in a sorority.
Yeah. So I mean it's interesting. I never watch anything with subtitles. I can't stand subtitles. There is someone in this world who has access to my Peacock. And last night while I was watching Sunday Night Football, 3 different times they also put it on and they switched it back to subtitles and I immediately switched it back and went, I pay for this. Whoever's using this, it could be a friend or it could be some rando that I accidentally left it on their Airbnb while I was watching a football game during last season or past seasons. Whoever's doing this, if you hear this, go fuck yourself. Stop turning subtitles on my
Hey, no,
Peacock.
you can't
Fuck
do
you.
it. Can't do it on TV. On movies, yes, because they're pre-programmed on movies. That's fine. But on TV, oh no, no, that's a no.
Just no subtitles ever. Go fuck yourself.
No, subtitles are good on
If
movies.
you are hard of hearing or need them for your hearing purposes, I'm not speaking to you. Use them all you need. I'm not trying to be an ableist here.
Hey,
If
what if you're watching a foreign?
That's completely different because you can't understand a word.
Well, it's another scenario.
Again, there's an exception to every rule, but my rules are subtitles unless absolutely necessary are total bullshit. I don't like it.
I love them.
I
Every
also
movie.
also yeah, as a slow reader, I hate it because then I'm reading and I'm missing shit on screen.
So used to it at this point.
I can't stand it. I hate it. Oh god, it drives me insane. Drives me insane when I get to people's homes and they're like, "Oh, isn't this great?" And I'm like, "No, it's not." But I can't say it because I'm in someone else's home and I'm doing their rules, not mine. But alas. So I'm gonna go back to Peter and Jess for a second.
Okay, yeah.
Actually,
Actually,
I'm
I
gonna
did want to mention the abortion thing. Isn't Roe v. Wade like 2 years prior?
73. Yeah.
Like that's a pretty 1 year prior. That's a pretty hot topic, like hot button issue.
So abortion from I could be completely off, but obviously abortion is very important in our household, seeing how my wife is a very proud
Yeah.
abortion provider. And it's dictated a lot of our life, of where we could and could not live, because that's very important to her and her work. And just her as a person, and I agree with it. So it's not as if abortion didn't exist pre Roe v. Wade. It's just Roe v. Wade guaranteed the access to it in the most safe way possible.
Okay.
Where before it was so like taboo that if you were gonna provide that care, you couldn't really do it in the safest ways possible. Roe v. Wade guaranteed that it had to be, you had to have access to it, legally speaking, nationwide. Like no state could just say, "Well, no."
Okay, gotcha.
It was, and abortion at the time. I'm not trying to say abortion wasn't a hot topic issue all the time. It's always been a point of discussion, but it's really not a discussion in terms of we got to get rid of this from a conservative point of view until really this century. There's always like, it used to be like the crazies would do that, right? Like the crazies on one side, like you get 2 or 3 politicians that were just really fucking crazy and saying this is against my religious beliefs, but you had politicians that even if they didn't agree with it were like, well, we believe in this thing called separation of church and state, but now we don't believe in that anymore apparently. So
yeah, I wonder if it hadn't been so just 1 year prior, if that would be a plot point.
yeah, it would be interesting to see that, certainly. I mean, first of all, I literally was sitting there almost cheering Jess on like my wife and her friends would do during like a movie and wine night, where I was like, "You go, girl! Come on, Jess! Good for you!"
Yeah, she's a strong woman in this.
Strong, independent woman. She gets pregnant, immediately says, I don't want to have this." She's still kind. She's trying to be respectful of Peter's feelings, but at the same time, she's like, "It's not your decision. It's mine."
And she's also like, "I don't want to marry you."
Oh, that was great. So great. And I loved. Well shot scene was when Peter's doing his recital, and it's clear that he sucks.
Oh yeah, I was like, these guys look like fuddy-duddies who I kind of suck, but I also agree with them. Peter's music sucks.
Well, he was visually really doing a good job of selling it, where you just go, this guy clearly not having a good day. Not having a good day on the sticks. But when he busts the whole piano up, then comes and says, well, does he bust the piano beforehand? Can't remember what the order is, but when he comes to the house and he's like, I'm done with the conservatory. I'm done with this. I want to stop. I want to quit, and we're gonna get married. And he just says it matter of factly. And like back in the day, that shit happened all the time. Oh, it still happens all the time.
I have a note about that. Yeah. His response to just says, "My friend is missing and a girl got murdered in the park," implying like, "Hey, I think my friend is dead." And then his response to that is, "Quitting the conservatory and I'm moving out."
Yeah, what a like, egotistical piece of shit. What an egotistical piece of shit. Peter. Read the room, man. Read the fucking room. Exactly. Beyond the fact that A, your desires do not impact hers. They don't. It doesn't fucking matter.
No, they don't.
But also, put it in the context of the movie. Your response to you, who you believe is your future wife, when she says, with concern that her friend might have been murdered, and a young child was murdered today is, well, don't worry about that so much. I've got good news for you.
Oh
Hey,
yeah.
I'm quitting on all of my dreams and we're getting married. No.
Hey, again, I think that's good writing. There are people like that.
There are tons of people like that. Do you want to know why I know that? Because social media will tell you real quick how many people will get into that. The amount of people that still get in that situation, I will never understand it. But these, I will never understand it. Or, hell, there are people that I'm not going to say how I know them or anything, but I'm in circles around people with very young people in them. And them going through the dating world right now and hearing some of their stories and just going, the person you're speaking to is a walking red flag and you need to get the fuck out now. And I'm not saying that out of judgment because young people always make mistakes and believe, thankfully for the most part, for the good in people. And that's a good trait, not a bad trait. But then sometimes you hear some of the stuff about the people that they're with and you're like, that's it. Get out. Get out as fast as fucking possible. I'm telling you this as someone who appreciates you as a human being. Don't fucking do this to yourself. But these people still exist, and it's crazy. And I love that even in '74, there was a movie here to be like, no, that's not my dream. I don't care. I still have, and I love the way she puts it. Which was really well written scene. Remember how you said this was all your dreams? And when she says, yeah, I remember when you said that your dream was to be a concert pianist, I literally rolled my eyes and went, oh god, it's gonna be one of those scenes. Like a kid who like talking to like 9-year-old me who wasn't gonna hit 5 foot for another 4 years and being like, I'm gonna be the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers. Be like, you remember your
Yeah.
dream was being the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers when you could barely throw the ball 30 yards and whatever, and you clearly were never gonna have the size or talent to do it. I was ready for that eye roll moment to be like, oh god. But then I still have my hopes and dreams, and I'm not going to give them up for you. I was like, that's a great turn. It's a great way to do it. Respectful, almost disappointed in the right way for a person to not insult them, but just I'm really disappointed that you're going to give up on your dream like this. But I'm not going to do that to myself. I was like, that's great writing. I'll give him that one. I was like, that's good. And then him just to storm out and just be like, you're gonna regret this. I was like, oh god, what a twat.
Yeah. That's the that's the kind of writing that I don't think really is the greatest part of it, is when they have to be a little bit on the nose with the red herring stuff. But that's just, I think you have to put that in there
I think
just
I
because.
think even had they gone with something slightly subtler, where this isn't over, like, or hey,
Sure.
this discussion, this isn't the end of this discussion, and you can show a bit more of the mania behind it. I think that accomplishes your goal in a better way because it's not as simple as you're gonna come to regret this. I'm gonna make you regret this. You're like, huh? Wonder if you're gonna do something physically violent, you fucking twat. Like,
I mean, they do good. They do show a good. They do a good job of showing that he is like, he will be a future asshole, no matter what. Like,
yes,
he's gonna be an abusive asshole in some way, shape, or form.
yes. Like he is clearly a walking red flag, and he's a piece of shit. Which I
Yeah.
love. I loved that. And then on top of it, to end the movie, because I think we've kind of danced around the entire movie. The only other comment that I have is I don't fully understand how Mrs. McHenry dies with that gag, but whatever. It's fun. So,
Oh, it's a, there's a hook.
yeah, I mean, it's like a stage crane almost. I get it. But I don't understand how swinging that is going to immediately, with a blunted end and a blunt instrument, is going to hang her through the fucking throat and then drag her ass out. Like, that's where I was like,
Well, if it's got a hook,
I'll give it to you,
it's got
but
a hook, and it hooks like into her.
it's not sharp enough to do that. It's clearly like a giant blunted edge. And from
I thought
that
there was a
distance,
hook on it.
there is, but it's like a blunted, big ass, like crane hook. It's not like a fishing hook where it's sharp.
Oh, I thought there was a sharp look into.
I saw it far more as like this big blunt ass, just like rounded crane look, where the end is far more of
Oh
like a
no, that is
U.
part of it. That is part of it, and then lower there is like an actual hook.
Oh, maybe I just missed it because it visually wasn't particularly great. The stuff
That was the part
beforehand.
he. That was the part he was holding on to
Oh,
that you're talking about.
maybe I just missed it because I only saw that part and I was like, how the fuck did that kill her? But okay, I was still
Yeah,
like,
and
it's
then
kind of fun.
she gets hoisted up like a doll.
Yeah, that was kind of crazy. But end of the movie is wild, just wild.
Which part in particular are you talking?
I think the whole thing from the last phone call to you need to
Oh
get
wait,
out.
I wanted to ask you actually.
Yeah,
Did you know about the phone calls coming from inside the house?
beforehand.
Yeah.
No, I picked up on it
Okay.
immediately, but
Okay. Because I mean, most people know that from When a Stranger Calls,
yep.
that movie. So I
Scream, a
was,
lot of other stuff has used that. Like, oh, the phone calls are coming from inside the house.
yeah, like
Oh,
most people know it from that movie rather than this one.
yeah.
So I was wondering if this twist worked on you.
I knew what was happening immediately, so I was like, well, how else is this gonna happen? But at the same time, I still thought it was a fun way to do it.
Yeah.
And again, it deserves credit because it's the first to do it versus the last to do
Yeah.
it, or one of the
I don't know if
first to
it's,
do it in a mainstream way.
yeah, I was gonna say probably one of the first because this is based on like that whole thing is based on a urban legend, which is like the babysitter and the man upstairs or something like that.
Huh.
Like this huge folklore thing from the 50s that has been told time and time again. So
Interesting.
I'm assuming it's been in movies too.
But the whole ending from the final phone call when the cops are like, "Oh fuck, it's inside the house." Nash completely bungling that call and yelling at a person who's already in distress, like you're a fucking idiot. Also, no police force is just gonna let it slip. Oh yeah, a young girl died, and like just let the public fucking know that immediately on a phone call with some rando person. The public is eventually gonna figure it out. It's obviously gonna be a big news story, but with a phone call with someone who at the time isn't related to this case whatsoever. They're not just gonna blurt out, "Oh yeah, a young girl died." It's like, are you of that much of a fucking moron, you idiot? Like that's fireable. If I was running that department, your ass is gone immediately. I'm like, you're a fucking idiot.
Well, I mean, they are idiots, so
They are a bunch more. Or when he comes in with buckshot up his ass because the farmer, like again, it's just like that isn't necessary this late in the movie. Just to really, if this movie had a message, it was don't trust the police because they're incompetent. Not even because they won't help you. They're just incompetent. You get to that. Jess knows what's happening in the house. Goes to try to find Barb or Phil. And they're dead. You get that shot of the eye through the slit of the door. Fucking beautiful. And I love how to get away, like grabs at her hair, pulls her hair, but she still gets away. It's not like some I'm gonna drag you over the stairs, Michael Myers esque, and like fucking kill you that way. I was like, okay, this is nice. Still showing a pursuit. She gets in the basement, and immediately like, well, this can't end well.
yeah.
You don't go in the basement
Uh,
to end things well. It's Silence of the Lambs 10 fucking 1. You don't go to the basement for good things. It's bad things happen because it's dark
yeah.
as shit.
They do a good job. They set up that the door is like they have problems with the front door.
Yep. They set
They
all
had
that up
previously
really
locked
well.
Yeah, they had previously locked all the other doors and all the windows. So it's like, okay, the only door that was open is the basement. So it's like, okay,
Yeah,
I
that
buy that.
that was okay. You at least told me why, so I'll give it to you. And then the shot of Peter at the window when it's just the
Yeah.
shadow, that's creepy as fuck.
Yeah, it's so good. I love that shot. The silhouette when he's walking across the windows, goes to the door. I love it.
Well, when he comes like this, he's like creeping down, and you're like, that's
Yeah.
fucked. And I love how she hears his name, and even though I still think she's under the belief that Peter's not the killer at that moment. I mean, maybe that's just me giving her a lot of credit, but she still clearly is like, I don't trust this motherfucker to not kill me either. So I'm just scared in general, and I love those reactions. She's like, I'm just gonna hide. I'm not gonna get close to the window and try to be like, well, maybe Peter will come save me. The only thing I was a little concerned about because of modern movies that have done this is when the bad guy turns out, like the bad person, not the bad guy, the bad person comes back and has some sort of redemption. I was like, please don't try to make fucking Peter the baby face. I don't need that shit. Keep him a heel. And I love the fact that he got in.
Yeah.
He still looks deranged and psychotic, and he's still a heel.
Yeah. He's creepy at the end.
I loved the fact that he was still a heel, and she just went, nope, I'm not doing this shit, and killed him. I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it. And then the worst police force of all time gets her up into bed after saving her, and they all just leave her alone and leave the house. I know the writers are trying to leave it as like, oh, well, Saxon got called away because of the press, and he's the detective. He kind of runs the department, so he's going to have to leave. Okay. And then the other two rando people that are in the room with the dad has a heart attack or some sort of health issue out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Which
it seems to faint.
It just seems to faint, but I was like, why do you need to take him to the fucking hospital or whatever? But naturally they leave, and I was like, no one's gonna look after this girl? No one's gonna take care of her? And then they just show one patrol guy on the outside of the house, and they shut all the lights off too? I was like,
yeah,
you're not putting your fucking 6-year-old to bed after they have a nightmare. This woman has just in your mind, had a mass murderer show up at her home and try to kill her. You fucking morons. Why would you why?
Did you turn it off right away, or did you watch through the credits?
I didn't watch all the way through the credits, but I watched like part of the credits.
Okay. Did you hear the phone ringing through the credits, though?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So the question is, at the end, did Jess die? Like, has he already killed her? Because he seems to only fall after he's murdered someone. Was he calling the house because he's already murdered Jess?
I guess if that's the way to look at it, I would assume you're led to believe yes.
Huh.
Also, to go back a second, because I need time to think about that. Also, worst fucking police force ever. You don't search the rest of the house?
Yeah, well, I guess they're just...
You just see him dead and you're like... You're like, okay.
I guess they're perfectly fine with accepting that it's Peter.
You don't think, maybe let's just sweep the rest of the house. Someone was in the house calling to torment these women. You don't think we should comb every inch of this home? You just think, we got them, boys. Like it's fucking George W. Bush talking about Bin Laden. Like, are you fucking, or Saddam Hussein? Like, are you out of your fucking mind? No.
And once again, not the best police force.
The worst fucking police force in the world. And to your point, I think again, they leave so much up to the viewer to say, okay, are all these murders connected? Maybe, maybe not. Is the serial killer like, what is their goals? You don't fully know. You just know they like to kill people. You know, do they have...
Yeah, and really, you don't actually know if all the dirty calls are actually one person or not.
Yeah.
Really, they could be more than one person.
Yeah, and so I was like, okay, like there's so much left to interpretation, and that's clearly intentional. But there's so much to interpretation that I was kind of like, I'm just going to leave this with hoping Jess gets out. I'm just going to be like, I'm going to be Mr. Positive and just say, somehow she makes it.
My assumption is she is dead, but it'd be nice for at least one to survive.
yes, that's kind of like my assumption is, well, she gone. It's over. But at the same time, I'm also just trying to be optimistic and go, no, 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 no. Like, it's okay. It's okay. Things will work. But who fucking knows? But good movie overall. It's yeah. My biggest notes still are Peter still sucks. Peter fucking sucks. I have another note.
Yeah.
I hate Peter. He fucking sucks. Was my last note on Peter.
Yeah.
I was like, what a
The
fucking
only note
douchebag.
only note we didn't talk about that I have is that search party. Those two guys that come to the window and scare Phil.
What a bunch of
I was like,
boobs.
I put this search party's not exactly instilling the confidence in it.
No.
Yeah, like they are
Crazy old
they're
man
worse
and a
than
guy with a fucking rifle just show up, and you're like, we didn't mean to scare you. We just decided to pop up in front of your window. It's like you didn't knock on the fucking front door.
well, that's like 10 times worse than like hillbilly redneck. Like they are
Right?
just idiots.
Just a bunch of fucking groveling morons. And God, yeah. So here's the thing. I think overall, the strong points of this movie are really strong. And then but I don't think there's a true like cohesive flow to the movie. And some of the pieces are quite jarring together. So I think that's why I have the overall thought process that I do. I think it's good. I think the central core of this movie is very strong. I just think they find that strength and accentuate it best at the end, and it doesn't flow all the way through. That makes sense?
Sure.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
wish I would have
I
saw
think
more Jess even early on. I wanted more. I think this would have been even better if this whole thing, like, even if you got rid of a few side pieces of story or character and just went, really, let's hyper focus on Jess.
I'm not really sure how long this
It's
movie
98
is.
minutes. It was a nice short view. I fucking loved it.
98. Yeah, 98. Took like I don't know, maybe 4 minutes where you just cut some of the unnecessary jokey stuff.
Yeah.
Like that could work perfectly then.
Yeah, I would say that's where I would go. Because I think you can get away with a small scene of snickering or whatever. Like, I think the fellatio joke is not inherently bad.
I love it.
But
And
when
I
you
like the
when
callback to it later.
but the callback is so long that I'm like, you guys are trying
Yeah,
to track a
that's the problem.
murder. Are you trying to track a
The
murderer down, and then right after
that
you're
is
like,
too long. Yeah, it's way too long.
yeah,
That's the
that's right.
problem.
That's where I just go, no, I don't have. Or someone like even as much as I loved some of the character work, like way too much of Mrs. McHenry at times, where I'm like, you don't need that much. You don't need that much.
Yeah.
There's almost times when after you said there's a lot of stuff that we could cut there, where I went, were they just trying to make this longer to make a more impressive runtime? Because I don't think they need some of this.
Yeah, they did. They don't. I mean, I think it's like 75 minutes technically you need to be a theatrical release. So they could cut
Could have cut
anything really.
23 minutes technically, and it would have been fine. So,
Yeah.
but it's an interesting thing. But overall, I enjoyed it. I am glad that you brought it up. I would add it to the positive list of Christmas movies, which is short, that I have.
Yeah. Also, I didn't mention this movie's pretty cozy at times.
Yes. Your
It's got that
favorite.
70s got that 70s film grain, and then there's one shot in particular that I really love where it's just sitting in that chair in the den with the fire roaring in the back. That's cozy.
That's a good shot. It is a good shot. And I liked the mirroring of her looking with the phone and the lieutenant looking at the phone and just being tense, like we're just waiting for the moment. I love that because that was reality. Because a lot of times you don't think about it. If that were going to happen, best case scenario, you're waiting there for hours, trying to like just hope. Okay, I'm stuck in this horrible situation. I need to make this work so I can fix the horrible situation. that tension is awful to deal with. It's like if your boss texts you and says, "Hey, I need to talk to you at the end of the day," and he does it right in the morning, and all day you're just in this tense like,
Yeah,
this
that's
can't be
true.
good.
Yeah.
This can't be good. This can't be good. But you have to keep waiting because I vividly have memories of just going, I'm not waiting. I'm not doing this. If I can find a way to weasel my way in now, I'm going to do it. Or I'm going to send the text back. How bad is this? Is this like real bad, or is this, hey, I just needed to figure this situation out? Because if it's that, tell me that so I don't fucking panic all goddamn day. You know? And I actually just saw a clip of that online where someone who critiques the bosses was very much, they just put in a subject line, one-on-one chat dash positive talk, and it just was like, what a nice thing for a boss to do, so that you don't fucking panic all the goddamn day beforehand, just by saying it will be good, not I need to speak to you by the end of the day. It's like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is a very cozy shot. Your favorite movie word, cozy.
Yep.
But overall, fun times. I think it was a good movie. So I assume we're both going to say this is worth the rewatch.
Yeah. Give it a shot if you haven't seen it. Most people haven't.
I would recommend this. I would say I think this is pretty damn good, especially compared to some other stuff that's out there in the ethos that you could watch that is not worth your time.
Yeah. And it's not like not gory or anything.
No.
70s horror, so not like gonna be over graphic or anything.
Even the little bit of gore that is in this movie, it's not going to put you over the top, and you're going to go, you're going to, oh, they died. Okay.
Yeah. It's nothing.
It's not bad. So yeah, I would highly recommend this movie as well. Just again, another great thing about the throwbacks when you recommend them, short run time. So even if you don't like it, you're not sacrificing a lot of your day.
True.
I woke up severely late today to accomplish all the things I needed to, and the runtime of this movie saved my ass. Where I just went, oh, still we're gonna get all this done. So I was very thankful for that. So it's worth a watch for you. But that is going to be it for this episode of the show. And this is coming out right before Christmas and the rest of the holidays, which is perfect timing for this movie if you haven't seen it. I am excited to. I'm going to be down with our extended family. Unfortunately, Dylan's not going to be able to make it. I think this might be a watch with Hannah and Sammy. This might be a cousin's watch because they're really adopting yours and my extended old horror love. So
yeah, there you go.
So we might watch this for a Christmas tie-in, unless we watch the same movies that we always do. But it should be a heck of a lot of fun to do that. So, but that is this episode. You're gonna get a bonus episode next week as we go into, or this coming week, I should say, because you're going to get another Fix It episode where Dylan and I try to fix Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. The Harry Potter nerd over there is going to try to fix a franchise that, frankly, never should have been. So,
wish.
Yeah. But, alas, and then next weekend, you're getting our 2024 movie review where you're going through some of our favorite stuff throughout the year, just talking about some good things. And it's not going to be all new movies. Some might be movies that we just discovered this year or other things. So it's going to be a heck of a lot of fun there, and we're going to get you ready for the new year, and there's a lot of new content coming your way on this show, so please stay tuned and stay in touch via social media or YouTube, wherever you can. But thank you guys so much for listening and watching wherever you may be. Happy holidays. Go watch a great movie, perhaps even Black Christmas. Peace, love, and hugs to you all. Goodbye!